Hey friends, how are you? I'm very, very excited to have on the line our good friend Dr. Jeff Lewis from silver-coin-investor.com. He's in San Francisco, California. I'm not sure how he does it. How do you live out there with all those liberals, Jeff?
Oh, it's always a challenge. Thank you. Nice to be here.
Hey, it's fantastic to have you. I want to let folks know that you also have a free forum that's growing. Folks can find that at 47forum.com. And again, it's Dr. Jeff Lewis. And you just did a great interview with Ted Butler recently there on your YouTube channel. Can you remind people how they can find your YouTube channel directly, too?
Sure. It's youtube.com/silvercoininvestor, all one word.
Yeah, and you're doing some really good interviews. You're using Google Hangouts, allowing people to join in and ask questions in real time. It's just a great idea. Let me just hit on this. I've been hitting on this in every one of the past videos I've done here, probably the last 4 or 5 videos. I want to remind people that the inflation-adjusted all-time high for silver in 1980, according to John Williams, was $138 an ounce. Today, because of all the Federal Reserve money printing, it's $601 an ounce. And Jeff, today's silver price equates to about $2 in 1980 dollars. $15, $16 an ounce silver is an absolute gift given to us by the manipulators.
I agree. I think that even if if you took the average price from 79 to 80, and you don't even have to use $50, you're still, way undervalued compared to really anything else out there.
That's right.
So
Yep,
that's a really important point.
Well, Jeff, we can move off that, but the point I wanted to make about that is that it's an absolute gift at 15. I know that the earnings for the average American haven't gone up very much since 1980, but certainly there has been inflation because movie tickets are no longer $2, and the median household income is closer to $55,000 than it is $17,700. Okay, well, Jeff, I want to ask you about the global picture for silver and gold. Did you see that piece from SRS Rocco? India's imports of silver are surging, and they're on track to eat up 40% of global physical supply. That's a big, big story, and another big story is what we're seeing at the COMEX, all-time low registered silver inventories.
Yes, I did see that. In addition to, there's always sort of just a tiny trickle of silver really available for, that level of investment demand, the 1,000 ounce bar investment demand. So I think, we keep seeing, despite low prices, significant demand, even at the retail level. And, I know there's a lot of controversy about how you define retail shortage, but there are plenty of stories out there that coincide with what we're seeing worldwide, really. So it's here and it's over there as well.
That's right. We just talked to the doc over at Silver Doctors about this in our last video. The Perth Mint introduced their new silver kangaroo, and they sold 3.5 million of them in one day. Now, that's a coin that will have unlimited mintage, unlike the kookaburras and the koalas, but 3.5 million of them sold in a day. You want to talk about retail demand? That's a terrific example. I mean, people around the world are waking up to the fiat fraud. And, those in the know are trying to stack physical as fast as they can because I think time's running out.
Yeah. I think that what you pointed out earlier about the real inflation adjusted price of silver, that's been out there for a while, and I don't think that something like that can exist without people beginning to wake up to it, and they wake up to what that really represents as an echo of these decades, maybe a century of monetary policy gone wrong. We haven't seen necessarily the manifestation in retail consumer prices, although some would argue that we have to if you're paying attention. But that amount of that delta between, as you say, a $2 price of silver in 1980 or where it should be today, or where John Williams' estimate of at $600 an ounce, it's an undeniable phenomenon, and I don't think that people can ignore it much longer.
Well, and as we've said, Jeff, the men behind the curtain have been revealed, right? We've been saying that for a very long time. And of course, Putin is really shining the light of truth on so many things right now. He has revealed the men behind the curtain and the U.S. government's plan to create ISIS and manage ISIS, to bring down Assad and to cause more havoc in the Middle East. And he's also, along with China, revealed the men behind the curtain with the Federal Reserve and the dollar Ponzi. As China and Russia move away from dollars entirely, again, the men behind the curtain have been revealed. How much longer do you think this dollar paradigm has when we see that the buyers of last resort are no longer China and Russia, it's the Federal Reserve itself?
Well, I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but with each passing week, we get one more, variable, one more confirmation that we're getting close, that things are, sort of running out of control. We're hitting, we're delaying. We've delayed or we've put off the fiscal deadline once again. Even when we talk about, a fiscal deficit, we're not even including, the unfunded liabilities that are due right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's not even really, a fair, calculation. But, when these countries stop buying our debt and when our government says, okay, the Federal Reserve must print now to pay for the running of government. And when we start hitting, double the amount of money that we collect in taxes, which is very soon, then it's really hard then to control or to ignore the increase in money velocity that will follow. So I think we're getting closer. I don't know. It's very hard to put a date on any of this stuff. Like I said before, we were talking about the silver price. What I'm most excited about is seeing if, in terms of silver, if the intervention that's been successful at keeping prices so undervalued is continuing. And I think that's one place to look. And if JP Morgan says no more, or if the commercial net short position doesn't cap this rally like they did all of the other rallies, then that's I think an interesting sign of where things could be turning. And we'll see that echo in the sort of macro financial world.
Yeah. One of the things that occurs to me as we look at the unmasking of the shadow government, right, the deep state, as Peter Dale Scott calls it, as we see Putin, of course, with his actions in Syria and on the world stage, as we see Russia and China together, really revealing the men behind the curtain and saying, hey, look, you guys have abused your privilege of having the world's reserve currency for long enough, so much so that even though it will hurt us and it will probably hurt our economies, we no longer want to buy your debt. We no longer want to fund your hegemony. We no longer want to fund the U.S. empire. And it reminds me of the term banana republic. And I just want to read this for you, Jeff, and tell me if this doesn't resonate with you. A banana republic is a political science term for a politically unstable country whose economy is largely dependent on exporting a limited resource product, dollars. It typically has stratified social classes, including a large, impoverished working class and a ruling plutocracy of business, political, and military elites. This politico-economic oligarchy controls the primary sector productions to exploit the country's economy. Think Goldman Sachs, think JP Morgan, think the Federal Reserve, think the Pentagon and the military-industrial complex. Is America anything less than a banana republic at this point?
Yeah, I think it's a haunting description that you just read. It's quite absurd when you think about the collective understanding or awareness of that. It's sort of shocking. I think that people, unfortunately, most people are in for an unsettling wake up call.
I do too, and you couldn't be more correct. I mean, how bad is this thing going to get when the collapse happens? I mean, look at Venezuela, look at Argentina, look at Weimar Republic, look at Zimbabwe. It could get very, very, very dark.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's important to a lot of people when we get to this question or this point, they want to just it's natural to want to shut down and not explore that. But I think what you're doing is important in that we should actually think about and explore and kind of go there where it's most uncomfortable and think about what that's going to look like, and if that if that enables one or if it leads one to do a little bit more in terms of preparation, that's a good thing. Or if it simply just allows a person to get clear on the potential devastation, or looking at all of the scenarios, like if a financial system collapses or shuts down, or if your debit card, your credit card doesn't work, or if the stores run out of food in 24 hours. Those are things that nobody wants to think about, but I think we all deserve to go there.
Well, Jeff, let me ask you this. I was watching your latest video, which you released on your YouTube channel there, Silver Prices and High-Frequency Trading. You note that the CME owns the COMEX, which is one of these for-profit exchanges, which allows big traders to buy access to see order flow. To me, it just means manipulation. It's just allowing the big boys to more easily manipulate the market and fleece the little guy, fleece the average Joe. Can you tell us a little bit about high frequency trading and algorithms, and tell us a little bit more about your perspective on the comics?
Sure, sure. I think the key point, as you point out, is that the CME is a for-profit exchange now. They weren't in the past, or these exchange, COMEX was not a for-profit exchange in the past, and that key has led to, taking a phenomenon that is, fairly benign in and of itself: computer trading, high-speed trading, algorithms. Algorithms are just instructions that become computer programs. So those things aren't really bad in and of themselves, but once you combine them with a for-profit, exchange, then the exchange is motivated to allow people who can pay, larger traders, to give them advantage or incentive, and so they give first looks at what the trade structure looks like in the general market, or they allow, because it's more volume, they allow spoof trading. Like 95% of trades can not be actually fulfilled, but 95%, but those trades actually last long enough for the rest of the algorithms, those held by the managed money funds or the hedge funds, to see them long enough to be triggered. And so, you can move the price wherever you want using these HFT algorithms, which are different than, HFT really, it's a designation for the traders who have this advantageous position given to them by a for-profit exchange. And yeah, like you said before, it's just more evidence of, like, the banana republic. We've captured regulators, or the system has really turned upside down. And most people don't know this, and or they support it. Generally speaking, the mainstream financial media is in support of high frequency trading because for lots of apologetic reasons, but mainly because they think it provides liquidity. The problem is that once the real volume dries up and it's just the HFTs left, then there's no liquidity, and these bad algorithms are trading amongst each other, and we get these massive flash crashes. So that's kind of how you could see an end to the significance of the COMEX. And does this happen in parallel with what's happening geopolitically or in the larger macro financial sense? I don't know, but one could trigger the other for sure.
Yeah, well, and a derivatives meltdown would really spell the end. That this whole Ponzi scheme is being stitched together at this point by the plunge protection team, by high frequency trading, by rogue traders out of control. Anything seems to go on Wall Street. The CFTC, as you point out, is not there. The regulators are not doing anything to rein in any of this criminality, which reminds me of what George Carlin once said, which is they'll get it all. Eventually, they'll get it all from you. They're coming for our retirement money, and they're going to get it. And I think he's right.
Yeah. Yeah, just one more reason to have something outside of the system, something that you hold.
Well, that's true, and it gets us back to precious metals. Let's segue over to the Fed, though, and talk about 0% interest rates. Do you see a scenario in which the Fed could possibly, just even to save face, could they possibly raise rates even, an eighth or a quarter of a point? Is it even possible?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that they can say anything, and they could come up with a new euphemism for money printing, and maybe say, oh, we've found a way to raise rates a quarter percent, but we're also going to introduce a new QE4 light, or some another, again, euphemism for basically money printing. So they may say one thing but do another, and hope that the market is okay with that. But I don't think there's any way they could just outright, raise rates. I mean, they may try, and it's possible that they as part of this overall plan, if they can if they can crash the market, get people afraid enough again that it would allow them the political room or political capital to literally to double down on what they're doing, and to I think they believe that they can, keep printing, and that they can, monetize, deficits going forward, and get away with it, just like the Germans thought that they could. They sort of think of themselves. I think they believe that they're in a vacuum, that this is the center of the universe. But I don't know. I think anything can go, but I don't think that they're going to, just like we saw in this last meeting. I don't think they can really get away with it.
Yeah, I don't think they can either. And, if you recall the cover of The Economist from earlier here in 2015, a very esoteric, sort of occult cover with all sorts of symbolism in it, world leaders on it, a mushroom cloud going off in the background. Very, very strange stuff on the cover of The Economist. And Jeff, you probably are aware of the 1988 cover of The Economist, which is a Rothschild-owned magazine, in which it predicted in 2018 a new world currency with a phoenix rising from the ashes, and around its neck was a gold coin that said 2018. Maybe that is the timeline. Maybe the crash is happening now, and ultimately they're going to just usher in their new one world currency in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of Putin and I think of China, I think that those, I mean, when I think of the Chinese central bank, for example, the People's Bank of China, I think that they would like to have, independence from the dollar, but not necessarily because they want to go back to a gold standard, but because they want the benefits of a fiat currency also. They want the ability to print as much as they want. And so that's my fear. And that then could, if the dollar collapses and we get hyperinflation, which I think we will, then I think that other currencies are going to collapse as well. And so that could be the segue to, a one world currency as an agreement. But I feel like my sense is that most big central banks, want the luxury that a, world reserve currency, but also a fiat currency, provides.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned hyperinflation. Before I let you go, let's flush that out a little bit. John Williams, again, who we discussed earlier with his inflation-adjusted all-time high of silver being now $601 an ounce, he's been predicting for a long time that the march into hyperinflation will begin in 2016, starting actually, I believe, in 2015. What makes you think hyperinflation of the dollar will eventually happen?
Well, I think that if you look at and this has been studied, if you look at most hyperinflations, the characteristics that they share, we are right there with all of them except for money velocity. And so most of the modern hyperinflations have had, an 80% debt to GDP. We're way over that now, even by a conservative measurement. Most have had more than, 40% deficit spending. So in other words, that, these countries were spending twice what they collected in tax revenue. And I think we're going to be close to that too, because, politically, if the market crashes, government is just getting bigger and bigger. And so, I think that, we've already captured, in a sense, government treasury has already captured the Fed in terms of, willingness to monetize debt. Like we mentioned before, we have Putin and China turning their backs to the dollar. So we're going to be more and more on our own. So those two factors. And then what happens when they start, when people really turn away from the dollar, or they sell dollars like China is probably doing, that then increases money velocity in addition to the new printing in order just to keep the government going. We keep hearing about helicopter drops as being a new reality. Well, you don't really even need that if you have, the expansion of government where it's providing more and more services. That fuels the turnover of dollars. And so once you get this process going, and it can take a while, there's no turning back. It's this positive feedback loop. And so, nobody wants to buy the debt. Nobody wants to hold it anymore. So we have to print more in order to buy our own debt. And it just keeps going and going. And that's where you start to see, 50% a month, inflation, 100% a month inflation, even 26% is like considered to be hyperinflation by many estimates. So, I feel bad when I hear John Williams make these predictions because he's made them before and he takes a lot of heat for it. I don't know. I mean, we talked about it earlier. This fiscal, sort of hitting the fiscal deadlines or just kind of moving them out. That's part of the process. Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers the question.
No, it does. And, just to back up John Williams a little bit, he's been very steadfast and consistent in the 2015-2016 timeline for hyperinflation. He's been saying that since 2010, 2011. But, in defense of any of us who have been speaking truth about precious metals manipulation, about what silver and gold should be trading at, about what current inflation-adjusted all-time highs are, et cetera, none of us even imagined that this malfeasance and criminality would continue unabated for so long. So when somebody says, well, John Williams has been wrong, that's only because the Federal Reserve is putting all the debt on its balance sheet. That's only because they've been hiding their criminality. As John Titus pointed out on his Best Evidence YouTube channel, they came from Planet Klepto. This stuff is run by criminals, and because criminals run the paradigm and are not ever reined in by the rule of justice, they get away with it. And then truth tellers like you or me or John Williams are lambasted for being quote-unquote wrong, when all we really are is living in a manipulated system in which confidence is rapidly being lost worldwide. It gets me back to the Putin scenario, right? The men behind the curtain geopolitically have been revealed, right? The lies about ISIS and the Pentagon funding ISIS and not really wanting to defeat ISIS have been revealed, as is true with the Federal Reserve manipulation of the dollar. And ultimately, when confidence is lost, the dollar will hyperinflate.
I agree. The central banks have been, they've been battling two fronts, as Peter Warburton points out. They've been, adding liquidity to the world financial system, and they're not doing a very good job with it because liquidity is drying up, and they can't hide, sort of the political aftermath of that. What they've been successful at doing is using a very small amount of money to incite investment banks to bet on the short side of commodities, thereby leaving most of us or most of the world in confusion about what the value of anything really is in relation to any currency. And so, but the jig is up, like you say. People are waking up to it. I don't think that it requires that many people in order to create a tipping point where something that was once conspiracy becomes just a truth or an everyday part of our lives.
Yep. That's one of my favorite terms, tipping point. Jeff, we hit a tipping point, a quantifiable tipping point with bovine growth hormone in the milk. The conspiracy mom said, hey, this is bad for our kids. We don't want this in the milk. Monsanto said, no, it's great. There's no difference between our BGH milk and regular milk. The mom said, we don't want it, so we're not going to buy it. And enough people stopped buying it that it's no longer in any milk. Even the milk at Walmart no longer has BGH in it. That's a real-world tipping point, right? We can exercise our power with our own economic choices. So instead of using our dollars to buy stocks, we can use our dollars to buy physical silver and physical gold, thereby hitting the banks in their Achilles heel, because it's the last thing they want, and that's where we can exercise our real world power against these tyrants.
Yeah. And some people will say, well, that means they're going to come after us, or they're going to make it illegal, or they're going to tax it so that it makes it harder to buy. I think that the more that anything that they try to do will just actually foment it. It'll just make it worse. It's like, when there are these really horrible, tragic shootings, we see that, gun sales go through the roof. When any kind of hint of, we're going to take, firearms away, sales go through the roof. And so it's because when there's a threat or something becomes potentially even more scarce, people suddenly wake up to scarcity and they see, I need this. And to think that people will, that they will happily turn over what they have or stop buying or, not create or develop, underground economies or, black market economies. I mean, we already have that. I mean, look at you saw the labor force participation rate is at lows from 1980 or, beyond. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's so many people out there that really aren't in the system anymore. I mean, that's the underground economy.
Yeah, more than 100 million people out of the workforce as this criminal government tries to tell us with a straight face that unemployment is at 5%. They just stopped counting people.
People believe it.
Yeah, it's shocking. Well, not the people listening to us and
No.
not the people that tune into your channel there on YouTube or sgtreport.com. Hey, Jeff, it's been a real pleasure to have you on. Can you remind people how they can subscribe to your YouTube channel and then tell them about your website?
Sure. So youtube.com/silvercoin investor. It's all one word. That's the YouTube channel. And then you can find me at silvercoininvestor.com. That's silver-coin-investor.com. But even if you type in silvercoininvestor.com, it'll show up. And that's how you can find me.
Great. And you can support Jeff's work, too. If you guys want to support Jeff directly, show him a little love. Tell them about your paid services, your newsletter.
Yeah, we also have a private membership program. It's at louis-mariani-research.com. So louis-mariani-research.com. You can try it out for it's $1 for the first month and then $9 after that. And we just go deeper on the subjects that we're talking about now.
Cool. And the last thing there is your forum, 47forum.com. That's a free forum for silver and gold enthusiasts, right?
Yeah, it's been really nice to see, to have this sort of take off. We have some really great discussions going on. I participate, but it's been very nice to have. It's a 47forum.com. It's free to sign up, and we'd appreciate any contribution or add to the discussion in the community.
Yeah, very good. Well, like I've said, Jeff, it's always nice to have people like you on because it gives me an opportunity to get outside my daily life where I have so many sheeple involved, friends, neighbors, colleagues. They're not equipped to talk about this stuff. They don't understand the language. So it's always nice to have on guests like you so that I can vent and so that we can inform the audience and help people prepare. So Dr. Jeff Lewis has been our guest, guys, from silvercoininvestor.com. Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you, Sean. It was really nice to be here.
And guys, thanks so much for tuning in to sgtreport.com, thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com. Real news 24/7. Thanks for listening.